And we're back with chapter 14. So I told you that this chapter is all about our relationship with bacteria. We're going to talk about our relationships, and then we're going to talk about when diseases occur, how we can keep track of what's going on. So let's look at basic bacteria. They're everywhere, so they're found in all the places that we are found in. They live with us, they live in us, they live on us, and without them, we would not be able to survive. So most bacteria are very beneficial to us, but there are some that do cause disease, and those are called our pathogens. So our normal microbes, or our normal microbial flora, are very beneficial. And up here you can see different species, staphylococcal species mainly, that live on us all the time. And they don't cause any problems. They're actually very helpful. But if we have some type of vulnerability that occurs, we scratch ourselves, we cut ourselves, something else happens, then that can cause these bacteria to move to areas they're not supposed to be in, and that can actually cause us to get sick. So if this happens, individuals that have some type of a weakness, like a cut arm or skinned knee or whatever, that's known as immunocompromisation. So we're not as able to fight off infections. So we have a lot of bacteria that live in and on us at all times. And I say bacteria, but I should say microbes that live in and on us all the time. And in general, these species live with us in a very beneficial relationship where they're gaining benefits and so are we. But if for some reason the bacteria that are in or on us decide to go rogue, go to areas where they're not supposed to be, or start replicating out of control, in an area that they shouldn't be replicating out of control, this can lead to our cells competing for resources and different things, and that can lead to, well, again, disease. So what is a symbiosis? A symbiosis, in a nutshell, is an association where two or more species come together. And so we can have types of symbioses that are beneficial to both, types that are parasitic, so they're not beneficial to both. And so before I get into that, let's look at two very different symbiotic types. Ectosymbiotics are organisms that live on or near the surface of the organism. And so on the side, you can see those little lice that are in this individual's hair. Those are called ectosymbionts. Endosymbionts are organisms that are located inside. Typically, endosymbionts are going to be smaller than the host, whereas ectosymbionts also are usually smaller than the host, but they can be larger than the endosymbionts. And hopefully you guys can recognize this as a human fetus. So I always like to say that babies are parasitic organisms. They're endosymbionts, and then when they are born, they become ectosymbionts. Ha ha ha. Just something I like to say as a joke. So here are three basic types of symbioses. Mutualism, where we're both gaining benefit. Commensalism, where one gains benefit, but the other doesn't gain or lose anything. And then I have competition and parasitism. Competition, both groups are going to be competing for organisms or for some resources, something. And so they both can potentially gain benefit at times, but the amount of benefit they gain is a lot less than in mutualism. Then in parasitism, one organism or one of the species benefits and the other one is harmed. And so if you look at our normal microbiota, you can see that we have, well, hundreds and hundreds of species of bacteria in every single region. And they're living inside of us, either in a commensalistic or a mutualistic symbiosis. So this is just the species that are always found with us. But if those species were to start replicating or were to start harming our cells for some reason, then they'd be considered a pathogen. So we're not born with all of those bacteria at birth. So we're not born with all those bacteria. We gain those bacteria as we go through the birth canal. We gain some of the bacteria just by being cuddled and held by mom and dad. We gain some of the bacteria from nursing and from the different things that we put in our mouth. So we start out with a very small amount of bacteria depending on how we were born. So if you have a vaginal birth, you're going to get gut bacteria relatively soon. If you have a cesarean, then you're not going to get your gut bacteria until we hit, a few weeks in. The type of bacteria that we're going to have are going to be different because vaginal birth allows the baby to come into contact with different species than a cesarean birth does. But in the end, we're going to have very similar microbiota as everyone else does. So I told you that the majority of our microbes are beneficial to us, and here's an example. Lactobacillus is one of our common gut microbes, and it is protective against other microorganisms. So if we kill off the lactobacillus, then Candidus albicans, which is a yeast, can start growing out of control. So it's only held in check by the lactobacillus. And so we need lactobacillus to control Candida. And if we don't have it, then we're going to end up having severe yeast infection in either the vaginal or in the mouth or penile regions. So we come in contact with microbes every day of our life, and we're growing our immune system from the time we are born. We're constantly allowing our immune system to get stronger and stronger, and that's what that picture of the baby in the mud is all about. If you allow your kids to get a little bit dirty and have some fun, they're more likely going to be healthy because they've come in contact with more microbes, which allows their immune system cells to respond easier. There is a hygiene hypothesis link, and you can see it right here. You can click on it. It goes to a YouTube video. It's about 7 minutes long that talks about this whole idea on using or on decreasing our idea of what hygiene really is. so that, we can let the kids have fun. So we don't have to constantly be wiping their hands or washing our hands, or if they touch something, worrying about what type of disease they could get. Likely they're not going to get any disease unless someone was sneezing in their hand and had a cold, then that could potentially get to them. So let's look at, we know that most of these microbes are really beneficial to us. So let's focus on those microbes that are not beneficial to us, the parasitic ones. Parasitism, or in parasitism, pathogens are going to cause damage or disease to the host. And pathogenicity refers to the ability of a microbe to cause a disease in a host. Pathogenicity is directly correlated with virulence. So if we increase the virulence of an organism, then we increase its pathogenicity. So how can we come in contact with these different organisms that are causing disease? Well, we have direct contact, which is probably the most common form of contact. Direct contact would be shaking hands, hugging, kissing, anything where you are directly coming in contact with the other individual. Vector-borne is going to be associated with more virulent pathogens that can cause more harm to the host. Any type of organism that can survive outside of the host for a long period of time is going to be considered more virulent than other species. So when you have bacterial infections, some of these infections can be called exogenous infections, where the pathogen breaches the external defenses and enters into the body. So it goes through the lining of the intestines to get into the blood. That would be an example. An endogenous infection occurs if normal microbiota enter a sterile tissue. So if you have some sterile tissue somewhere, so say you're working at, what do I want to say? Hold on a second.